What is mindset? Our mindset is based on what we believe, and anything we believe in, we put into motion. I have spent my life putting the mindset of perseverance into motion, and now I am here today to share my journey along with others whose mindsets have changed the course of their lives. Hi, I'm Mindset Coach Lorraine Lindsay, and I believe that if you can change your mind, you have the power to change your life. So, are you ready? Welcome back to another episode of The Mindsetters, where we believe that if you can change your mind, you have the power to change your life. And we are getting ready to start our part 2 of self-sabotage. And I'm going to do quick introductions of my guests because I'm very excited. But there's a lot of material and information that we would love to share with you all. So we're going to get right into it. I am, of course, your host, Coach Lorraine Lindsay. I am a certified peak performance coach and a certified life coach. I'm also a mindset coach. Please do not forget, I always forget this part, that if you are loving the content, if you like the information you're getting, please do not forget to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, send us your comments. We love hearing from our viewers. So without further ado, I have my returning guest, Mr. Rodney Allgood. And a little bit about Mr. Allgood. He is certified in NLP and hypnosis. He is also an award-winning professional public speaker. He is a former iHeart host of a show called It's All Good. He specializes in a deep programming course for people in high control religious groups. And that's just a small synopsis of who you are amongst many other wonderful things. So, Rodney, thank you again. Always a pleasure having you back on the show.
Oh, it's good to be here.
Thank you for coming again. And I have another special guest. She's first time on the show. This is Tamara Trybouslu. And a little bit about Miss Tamara here. She is also certified in hypnosis. Not only that, but she is certified in NLP, timeline therapy. She is the creator of a 6-week manifestation miracles journey. She teaches international real estate and has created the Diamond Award-winning Global Business Committee for the Las Vegas Association of Realtors. And again, that's a quick little synopsis because you are a woman of many wonders, but I love the fact that you're on the show. I know you're going to have so many great nuggets, so thank you for joining us here on this Mindsetters program.
Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So just a recap really quick on the show last week. We started part 1 on self-sabotage, and we really dived into the what do we do, what are some behavioral patterns of self-sabotage, and some little bits of why we do it. So today we really want to emphasize the how. How do we overcome self-sabotage? But before we get into the how, let's kind of go back a little bit and do a recap. Again, this is self-sabotage part 2. So what are some of the things that we do? And you were not with us, but I think you watched the show.
I did watch, yes.
But we talked about what are some of the patterns, because the thing with self-sabotaging is often there's not an awareness as to the fact that we're doing, or that we don't necessarily associate certain behavioral patterns with self-sabotage. So here's a couple of the bullets that we discussed last week. One of those was procrastination. That's a big one that a lot of people do not associate with self-sabotaging, but putting things off to the last minute, overwhelming yourself, overtasking yourself with things, and procrastination, you can really sabotage yourself, right? Because then you get into this defeat mindset and pressure mindset and all of that. Rationalization was another one. It's a big one where we make up excuses for our behaviors. We do things and we know we're sabotaging, but instead of being accountable to it, we make excuses and so on. The other one was self-criticism. That's a huge one for self-sabotaging. Talking badly about yourself, that mantra, that negative mantra in your head, beating yourself down when you're not committed. I mean, it kind of falls in line with all the other ones, right? You beat yourself up when you procrastinate, and et cetera. Sorry, I'm zipping through these. If you want to see the details, go back to part 1. Overcommitment, and I should have also put undercommitment, but putting your eggs in too many baskets, spreading yourself thin, and not putting self first, right? Undercommitting, just
Not showing up.
saying I'm going to do this and being, as people like to say, you're a flake, but sometimes it's a self-sabotage thing because you don't feel like you're enough. Sometimes we overcommit, and then because we overcommit, we can't show up and we become unaccountable and we just overwhelm, and it's a sabotaging behavior. And then there's poor self-care and unhealthy distractions. Of course, the poor self-care could go into diet, maybe for some who are underweight or overweight, and the way they treat their bodies. Hygiene, we talked about last week. And then also, self-care can go into how you manage your finances and how you
Mm.
manage your everyday life. You just kind of just find ways to muck it up. And then, of course, unhealthy distractions, whether it's drugs, or whether it's alcohol, whether it's sex addictions. You put all the addictions in there, shopping addictions, you name it, those are forms of self sabotage. So moving forward, then, the next thing we tapped into was the why. Why do we self sabotage? What are the reasons? And here are just a few, and there could be a multitude, but we kind of combine them into these little boxes. Number one, lack of self esteem. Modeling, which is a learned behavior sometimes that we get
Mm.
from our childhood, watching parents or adults around us. Rejection or neglect, which is usually associated with some type of abandonment issue. Cognitive dissonance. This one was a big one for me, and it's a big psychology word. But cognitive dissonance, for example, would be I grew up in a dysfunctional home, maybe a family, single parent, never seen marriage, seen abuse, and then finding somebody who's really good and treats me well and finding a way to sabotage that because it's not familiar. So that's that rationalization. Like, this is what I'm getting. It doesn't make sense to me. So let me find a way to destroy it. And then, of course, trauma. If you've had any type of trauma in your life, sometimes your self sabotage is a form of protection. You're trying to protect yourself from that hurt, that pain, that experience. And sometimes we have to actually face the issue in order to overcome it so we don't self-sabotage. So, I think I said that all in one breath.
Yes. You unpacked a lot.
So now that I've unpacked all that, let's find a way to neatly fold it up and fit it in the suitcase so it works for us, right? And so now we're going to go into the how. Well, this is the most important part. This is the reason why I do these kind of shows, is to bring some recognition and some uh, recognition for people to really like look and say, that's me. Yes, I can see that. But it's always like, okay, now I get it, but now what? What are the next steps that I need to do to really overcome this self-sabotage? Because the reality is no one wants to self-sabotage. We all want to have fulfilling, happy lives. But as long as that little nemesis is there, we're going to sabotage, if we're not dealing with our issues. So how do we overcome? And here we go. Before we go into the bullet points, what are some just general thoughts from either of you?
Well, I have a big overwhelming framework thought around it. And when I looked at, the list of self-sabotaging, to me, all of those are symptoms of being out of alignment. And so it's actually that it's just wisdom. For example, procrastination is wisdom that something is out of alignment. So it's feedback from your life that there's something that's out of alignment here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be procrastinating, and then become inquisitive about that. So when we ask questions, that's how we move things forward. So it's not enough to just know something intellectually. We've got to really dig deep. And like
Ask
you
the
were saying, is
questions.
you got to like really face something. And when we ask questions and we go deeper into things like, what is it about this? What is it that is not sitting right with me? Because when we're going into judgment, that just doesn't work. And truly, I believe and I see that there's only one source of everything in the world, and that's love. And when we're in a space of love, there is no judgment. And so the most loving thing to do for ourselves is to just pause and say, okay, I am feeling this sensation, whatever it is. What is the best thing? What's the most loving thing I could do for myself right now? This is wisdom for me to see that there is something obviously out of alignment. What is going on here?
And my question then is, because that's powerful,
Yes,
but at first the key thing that it takes is the awareness to be able to do that.
absolutely.
So Rodney, in your opinion, what would someone need to do just to get to that point, just to get to that awareness?
I think number one, you have to be willing to let go of your story.
Hmm.
And we talked about that.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have this story about who you are. And when you have the story and you're doing things that match the story, you keep going back to that's just how I am. Instead of doing what she said, it's a alarm. It's something that should be telling you something's out of alignment. Let me look at that. But when you're stuck in your story, you don't see it that way. That's the way I do things. That's the way I've always done things, to stay in your comfort zone of what you know. But when
Right.
you
Right.
can let go of your story and say, wait, I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling some anxiety here. Feeling like I don't want to get up and go. Feeling I don't want to push the gas on this. What is that? And when you let go of your story, you're able to kind of get to the root of where that's coming from. And I think it's really key to just look at any kind of negative emotion or any kind of thing where you are sabotaging yourself as a alarm, like something's here,
Right.
something's not right, something's out of alignment. What is it?
So, which brings me to the first point that I put down here, which is boost self-awareness.
Oh,
And it's
absolutely.
exactly what you all are saying. So, to kind of break it down and simplify it for people who have really struggled with awareness, because a lot of people really do,
Yes.
right? They're so it's so ingrained what they do, their day to day,
Hmm.
their habitual nature, that it's sometimes hard to be outside of that and see it for what it is. But to your point, Tamara, is if there's a situation such as procrastination, right?
Hmm.
It's about engaging with self without and then asking the questions like you said. So for
Right.
example, if I know that I have a project or something I need to do and I need to get it done and I procrastinate, maybe I don't know that that's self-sabotaging, but I know it doesn't feel good.
Right.
So to simplify it, what are you doing in your life that doesn't feel good?
Right.
Where you're looking at it and say, wow, okay, this doesn't feel good to me. Write it down, think about it, and then ask the question, well,
Hmm.
why does this not make me feel good? So again, with the example of procrastination, I can say, well, it doesn't make me feel good because I feel rushed, I feel stressed, I feel overwhelmed. Ah, okay, let me write down those
Hmm.
emotions. Where am I feeling that in my body? Oh, I feel it here, I feel it
Right.
in my chest. And where are there other times in my life that I
Hmm.
felt like that? And it's almost kind of like peeling back the layers and really getting your self-awareness that way. And I love what you said
Yes.
about just ask yourself the question. I have the feeling, now ask yourself the question.
Absolutely. Yeah, overwhelm is another great example of something's out of alignment. If you feel overwhelmed, because you could do so many things and have your plate full, as long as everything is in alignment with you, it's going to feel joyful. It's going to feel like you have plenty of energy, and you're in literally in joy, in that spirit of joy. But the moment you have stuff on your plate that is even, you don't have that much on your plate, but it's a drudgery, you feel overwhelmed because
Right.
it's out of alignment. It's not something that you desire to do. You're doing it because you feel obligated. It's out of duty, or you've made a promise to someone that your heart wasn't really into. And so being the total, like a total truth process, like just getting radically honest with yourself and being truthful, at least with yourself first, and then then being truthful with other people. So having that radical honesty, and a great exercise, talk about the story part, as far as like having just a practical exercise, is like literally writing out your story. If somebody's not aware that they have a story that they're attached to, is writing out their life story.
Right.
And and I do believe you can change your story and change your history. And I've rewritten my story. So we have our stories that we tell from when we're a child, and I've literally gone back and rewrote my story from a different perspective,
Right.
from the time before I was born. Like me, in my mom's belly, waiting to come out, and from the point of, I'm excited to be born into this world. I'm chosen because I had this story that my parents didn't, want me, that I was broken and that there was something wrong with me,
Right.
and I had carried that story for various reasons for a long time, for years and years. And when I finally unraveled that story and I told my empowering story and took full responsibility for choosing my life in the way I choose to live my life, and got into alignment with myself,
And that's
I
and
live from a different place.
and that's it's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing when you can get into that space. Um, I know for some people they look at their circumstances and their life and say, I can't do that. My story's too tragic. It's too painful.
It,
It's
it
too
is,
that.
and it is.
And I always,
Yeah.
I always suggest to people is that what happened you don't have to change what happened.
Right.
You don't have to.
But you can write from a different
But
perspective.
you can look at it from a different perspective. And I used this
Absolutely.
example a few episodes ago on my show where I about me losing a parent to suicide.
Right.
And initially, I was 10 years old when it happened. And initially, the story was that somehow I was to blame,
Right.
that I wasn't enough, that he took his life,
Right.
that I wasn't worthy of love for him to stay around. And that was a narrative that I told to what happened. Now, I cannot change the fact that he died in that manner. But what I did, to your point, was
Right.
at some point through work and self-awareness, because that story that I told from 10 years old was showing up at 21 and
In
31 and
patterns.
so on.
Absolutely.
So there was a narrative that said, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy of being loved, and so on and so forth. And by the way, that became wrapped up in these abandonment issues.
Right.
And when I had to ask those questions, why am I self-sabotaging? Why am I breaking myself down? It's like, well, because the 10-year-old little girl is still telling the story.
Mhm.
And I said, now I want to be brave in that. I want to embrace that as a fear, as opposed to living in my best light, which is love, and tell a different story.
Right.
So instead of me saying, okay, this happened and it's happening directly here, I got to look at it like it happened down here and now I'm looking down on it. And how does she tell that story?
Right.
And it was like, wow, I told the story with now compassion and care,
Yeah.
and ask the questions again. What was it about him that created that sadness?
Yeah.
Why didn't he think that he was enough for my love?
Exactly.
And just really rewiring that narrative. You were going to say something, Rodney?
Yeah, I was thinking back. This is a great story. When I was in school, when I was in high school, I accepted the story that I was a bad student because I got bad grades. I was kind of the class clown. I was always just having fun in school. Always showed up, but I always got bad grades, and I would get punished. I'd get put on restriction or grounded for like a month at a time. Every single report card, I'd get grounded. My brother had good grades, 3 years older than me. I had bad grades. I got so comfortable that I had a whole art kit. I was ready for my grounding, right? Sometimes I'd get my brother to not give his report card for a week because there's something fun to do because I was going to get grounded. It just became my norm. And I would do like what would happen every quarter is the next quarter, I'm like, you know what? No more of this. I'm going to do my work. And I'll be on the top of the class for like half the quarter. I'm at the very top. But by the end of the quarter, I take my foot off the gas once I get up, ahead of everybody, and I would drop right back down and get that D again.
So you had to support your narrative.
Right?
Yes.
So I had to
Yeah.
support the story that I was a bad
Correct.
student, And it's all about comfort zones, because this is a really funny story. When I was in the 9th grade, I hated math, and I told myself I'm horrible at math. So in the 9th grade, I'm in the low average math class. We're not even doing algebra yet. That's how bad we were. And all my friends, everybody in my class was friends of mine. We just laughed and joked. None of us did our work.
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher said, Rodney, if you don't straighten up, you're way too smart for this. If you don't straighten up, I'm going to put you in this special, I forget what the name of the building was, but you did not want to have a class in that building. These were kind of the special kids. And she threatened me, and I didn't believe her. So my 10th grade year, I'm walking with my program, first day of school, and I'm like, no, she didn't put me in this building. And these were kids, I swear, some of them are like 20 years old with full beards. All the flunkies are in that class.
To not to cut you off, but it's interesting that you said that, because basically when you summarize that, you had a compelling why to shift.
Right, that's what I'm going to get to, right? So this class was below my comfort zone.
Right.
Anything above what I was doing was above it. This is what I was
Right.
used to, right? So she puts me in the class. I get the book on the first day. I'm like, this is not right. This is like a 3rd grader's book.
Right.
I went home in like a week. I did the whole book for the whole year to get me out of that class. I don't
Right.
belong here, right? So
yeah.
you will perform. You will do anything if you fall below your comfort zone to get back in it. But if
Right.
you go above it, you sabotage yourself.
Right.
People are trying to stay right
and
here.
and so I want to reiterate this, because I want people to really, and I love the stories because it really helps people to connect.
Right.
But that's something that I really want to emphasize here, is that it's the story,
Yeah.
right? And it's the
Absolutely.
belief system on, and again, we go mindset. What do you believe about
Mhm.
yourself? Good, bad, and indifferent. Because write it all down. What's
Mhm.
great about you? And then pay attention to how that shows up in your life. What do you beat yourself up about? When we talked about self-criticism, write that down. Well, I'm not going to be good enough, or I'm not smart enough,
Sure.
or I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not attractive enough, or I'm not lovable. What is that language, and how does that show up in your life? Because to put it, blatantly, you are not going to make yourself a liar to your story.
Right.
Whatever you believe is how you show up in your life. So I want to get to the next one,
Absolutely.
because I do want to get them all in.
Right.
Look before you leap. Okay. Again, this is how to overcome self-sabotage. So Tamara, when you had said, this is the feeling that I get, right?
Mhm.
Get in practice to say, it's a matter of, I guess, getting in tune with yourself, with your body, with your emotion. And it's not easy to do when things can trigger you and cause you to spiral. But let's say you fall. Let's say you spiral and you don't have the control. You can always go back and say, okay, I didn't like that was my reaction. If I could have controlled that, have been more aware of that, what would I have done differently? If you can pay attention to your emotions first,
Absolutely.
you can take a pause and say, okay, let me look before I jump into this situation. What do you all want to say to that?
Oh yeah, I have a similar practice. I call it having an existential awareness of me. So I'm kind of like out of my body, watching myself operate, and so I do have that moment of pause. That, oh, it's interesting. I think that thought. I'm not attached to it. Or, yeah, it's interesting. I'm feeling this sensation. I'm not attached to it though. And then that gives me the time to take full responsibility for how I am going to respond to something, or to then, if I have, maybe I have done something that I need to take responsibility for, and say, you know what, that's actually not in alignment with how I truly feel.
Right.
And so I believe in 100% responsibility.
Right.
Absolutely.
And what do we say to people that, don't, again, that's in an enlightened space, but there are people who they just don't have that
It
yet.
starts with daily practice.
It's
Yeah,
practice.
absolutely.
And I'll give an example for my own self. I'll just be truly candid. Last episode, one of the things I told everybody to do at the end was write what your self-sabotaging go-to is and what your emotional home was. And for a long time, for me, my safe space was wrapped up in anger and sometimes rage, depending on how bad the situation was. It was a safe emotion for me to have at all times, always ready to go.
Right.
And I didn't have the awareness to take a seat back. It was just completely effective for me immediately.
Right.
And it would put me into this pattern and then trigger behavior, because I would always feel remorseful or bad about the anger. Or sometimes I felt very gratified in it because it gave me what I needed. It gave me the response and the control of the situation sometimes, because sometimes my anger would intimidate other people. And so there was some security with that. And so my question then is, how do you let your emotional home go when you feel like it's serving you? I know now with the awareness that it was not ever serving me. It was contributing to my sabotage. It was defeating me in relationships that I really wanted to connect with. And I really had to take a seat back and say, what I really want in my life, like you said, the alignment thing, I had to really write that down. What's my core value for me, and what's out of alignment here, and why do I want to keep this anger? What am I protecting? So how does someone overcome that? First, by identifying with that emotional home that they live in most of the time.
You have to play the movie out.
Yeah.
I like that.
You have to see the ending of the movie. When we react to our emotions, it's the immediate thing that we're dealing with usually. And you're either going to live with intention or you're going to live in reaction.
I love that.
So people who live in reaction are just responding to life or responding to how they feel in the moment. But people who live with intention play the movie out. If you don't like the ending, don't start the movie.
Exactly. Yeah. Starting with the end in mind. Absolutely.
Starting with the end in mind. I love that. You're either going to live with intention
Or reaction.
or reaction. I think I love when we just simplify it just like that,
Yeah.
right? Because I think people who are watching could say, that resonates.
Yes.
What's my intention, or do I just choose to react? And seeing in every situation in my life how I played that out. Tension, or was this a reaction?
Yeah.
Right? So the next one is set meaningful goals and action plans. And there's a great article where I got these from, and I'll reference it at the end of the show for people who want to read the articles, because they're actually really good. But again, and we're kind of reiterating, but it's good for people to hear it over and over because it'll just kind of sink in. But if my goal is, and I'll go back to the simplest one, which is procrastination, I don't like the way that procrastination makes me feel. And I'm realizing now that it is a form of self-sabotage. I'm sabotaging. I'm not getting my goals done. I need to be meaningful by saying, I need to set some rules here to say, okay, if this is my project or if this is the time I need to get to work or whatever that thing is that you procrastinated on, what can I do differently to make sure things get done in a timely manner without overwhelming me? And write those things down and put a plan of action into motion with that. You guys want to kind of tap into that as far as self-sabotage?
Yeah, well, and I'd still go back and ask the question of, is this goal really in alignment with me? And look at the procrastination as wisdom and as a gift, as this is wisdom that something's out of alignment. So is it the goal or is it the way that I'm approaching it? Because the way that I look at things is that everything is here to serve me. And so the procrastination is here to serve me too. It is a gift. It is the divine wisdom that something is out of alignment. So what is it? And I would still go deeper, and I wouldn't judge myself that I'm not doing something right. That it's self-sabotage. I say, okay, I'm my own best friend. This is wisdom. I'm getting feedback. What is it about either the goal or my process that's out of alignment? So sometimes people set goals out of ego as opposed to their heart.
Right.
And so is it because you want to accomplish this to impress somebody, or is it, and I'm not speaking of you,
No, of course.
I'm speaking just in general. I know that you're very much so in alignment and you're very intentional.
Sometimes. Not always.
So those are the questions I would ask is, what is it about this that is, because it's enlightenment. There's something being brought to the surface for my awareness so that I can reassess what my goals are or the way that I am achieving them.
So let me switch gears a little bit. Same concept of setting goals and putting them into action. Meaningful goals. The key word is meaningful.
Yes, absolutely.
What would you suggest to people who are struggling with other things like the self-criticism or the overcommitment? How would they be able to set meaningful goals and put an action plan into place, especially when we're dealing with self-criticism? What would you say, Rodney, that would be a good way for someone who's watching to say, you know what, I am very self-critical of myself. Sometimes first of all, again, tapping into emotional home, whether it's guilt or shame or whatever that emotional home is, I would suggest really understanding what's the emotion you feel mostly, anxiety, worry, shame, whatever. And then how does that tie into this self-criticism?
Well, I think that lasting emotion comes from finding ways to validate that over and over and over again. When you set yourself up for success, and you do that by your habits, rituals, and routines, right, where you detach what you're doing from emotion, you just do it, right? Somebody who gets up and does 100 sit-ups every morning in a year will look like they do 100 sit-ups every morning, right?
Right.
Now, whether you just do it, whether you feel like it or not, and at some point, your story is going to change. Like, one thing I'm struggling with right now, and it's because of a story, and this goes back to probably high school if I think about it. Well, I'm a motivational speaker who doesn't have a book. I never wrote a book.
I always wondered about
and people always ask me, do you have a book? I'm like, no.
Because you have a story.
Because I have a story, because that reminds me.
Now, is that an excuse?
It's an excuse,
Okay.
Right? It's an excuse. It's a story that goes back to school because I hated writing. Now, you follow me on Facebook. I write quotes very easily. I speak very easily. Writing is just writing down what you're thinking. I don't have a problem with words. But I have gotten in my way several times with the story of writing. I'm not an author.
Right.
Yeah, I am. See, I have a story. And the way to get past that, and this is good for me, a good conversation for me, is to get up and write a half hour a day. And if you do that over 6 months, you have a book.
You have your book.
Right? But again, the story, and we all got stuff where we
Oh,
get in
yeah.
our way.
Big time.
That's a story of mine right now, getting in my way of something I need to do. So again, detaching from the emotion, habits, rituals, and routines, having a habit of writing a chapter a day or half a chapter a day.
That's great. That is so great. And it goes actually to the next one, which is make small changes.
Yes,
I think
micro shifts for
micro.
macro effect.
I will say
yes.
one of my biggest self-sabotaging, one of many, okay, because I have a list, is being grandiose in my ideas. Okay. And so what will happen is, for example, my podcast or my speaking and coaching is I see the big picture in my mind. It's way out there and I see Disneyland. And so I always call your destination your Disneyland. So I see my Disneyland, but it's massive. And in my mind, I'm building it, right? But what happens is I get so overwhelmed by the thought of what I can see and envision for my life that I paralyze myself with not knowing where to start because I don't know how to reverse engineer. Excuse me. Yeah, thank
yes,
you.
yeah.
Reverse engineer what it is that I want. And this is where how to overcome that is to make small changes. And you hear people say it over and over again. Many motivational people say it's one foot in front of the other, in front of the other. And I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
But it's just sometimes saying, but what's the first step?
It is, and it's also allowing. So it's imagining all of life supports you. You don't have to do everything, and you're so capable, and you're an independent, woman, and you could do everything, and you think and perceive, imagine that you must move all those pieces to get there, and we don't have to. I mean, truly, we don't have to. That can manifest on its own just because we have the vision, and most likely there's going to be a million cooperating elements of other people and programs and platforms coming together that will manifest out of the ethers to make that vision happen. And that is the shift from that kind of like ego controlling to just relaxing into it and allowing that all of nature, all of life is here to support us.
I always say that, the RES factor, the reticular activation
Yes,
system.
absolutely.
And it's a, part of the brain for those that don't know that, for example, if you go and you're like, I want this brand new car. I love this car. And you go and buy the car. And now you go out into the world and that car is everywhere on the road. And you're like, I never saw this car before. I thought this was a special car for me. And all of a sudden now I think they've over manufactured and everybody got it at a discount because we've activated something.
Mm-hmm.
Our life is not any different than that, right?
Yeah.
Everything is for you and against you in the same room. If I say to a person, focus on the color blue, any shade of blue, and I have them close their eyes and open their eyes, they're going to see shades of blue everywhere within the room.
Right.
I can also say to do the same example with the color yellow, any shade, gold, bright yellow, neon yellow, and open your eyes and you'll see those colors in the room. Everything in your life that is for you and against you is in the same room when we talk about manifestation. It's like, and is it coming out of nowhere? No, it's in the room. It's just that you have to command what you believe in order for you to see it. If I believe red is a color of life and love, and I believe that, and everywhere I go, I see that color reminds me of that, you will see red everywhere. But if I'm in a frumpy mood and I don't want to see light and love, I will see every color but red is still there. So it's that belief system and making those small little shifts. We don't have to do big, huge things to make changes to our lives because some of those big, huge things include getting rid of certain people that you can't get rid of. What are you going to say, Rodney?
Prayers not in motion don't get answered.
Right. Faith without works is dead.
So you have to be in motion, right? You have to know what you want, and you have to know why you want it. And the how comes in the form of people, opportunity, and circumstances that are not on your radar right now. But if you're moving, you'll cross those things. I have crazy manifesting stories that have happened in my life, but you've got to be in motion. The last thing you got to worry about is the how.
Yes.
Because the how is usually not something that you even see yet. It's not even on your plate yet. You got to get moving. The why is huge. Why do you want something? Again, the reticular activating system goes into play.
Right.
When you're really focused on something, you start seeing the people. You start identifying things that can help you move you toward your goal. But if you're confused, if you're in a very um, a space where you're kind of watered down and you're not real clear, you won't see it.
Right.
You'll walk right past the things that could change your life. So getting clear, knowing why you want it, getting clear on your purpose, you got to own it. You The word that comes after I am. Again, people with negative self-talk have a negative word after I am.
Right.
But if you have a powerful word, a word that you've made true even before you see it in your reality, and that you made it true up here, you'll start identifying the things that can move you toward what you want.
When you said about the why and thing, it reminded me of Simon Sinek, and he
Mm-hmm.
had this really
Start with why.
the start with the why. It
Yes,
was a big TED talk that went viral.
absolutely.
It's probably one of my favorites, rightfully so. But to your point, it's one of the things that he said. You can't start with the how, and I think a lot of us
Mm-hmm.
start with how. How do I do this? How do I do that? How do this? How do this? But if you can just start with the why, and the why is compelling for
Right.
you,
Absolutely.
things will go into motion. And then again, I like to use examples. For me, 17 years old as a mother, okay, I was as a single mother, 17. But my compelling why was that my son has to have a different life than I had. That was so compelling for me. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what was and what I was going to do to make that happen. But it was at the driving force. It was the laser focal point for me. And so because I focused so much on that compelling why, anything that met the criteria to support that, I did it. So if it was a job career, if it was pairing with the right people, making sure my son was around the right environments, making sure he was getting the right education, it was whatever I could do. It was so compelling.
Mm.
Literally, when my son graduated from high school and went off to college and went to go do his big job in New York, I took the hat off, brushed off my shoulders, and was like, wow, that compelling why is a real thing. And it worked, and it was effective because I did not lose focus. Now the trick is for my life currently is, how do I find a compelling why for myself?
Mm.
And how do I put that into motion? The
Right.
same way I did for as a mother to my child, you know? So I love that. I think for people out there, what's your why? Good and bad. Why are you beating yourself up? What's your why? Be honest. Because your mom told you that, because your dad told you that, because
Mm-hmm.
your mom wasn't there, because your dad wasn't there, because so-and-so violated you or did something bad to you when you were a child. What's your why you're telling yourself that? And now ask yourself, is it true? Because the answer is absolutely not. It's not true.
Right.
And then ask yourself, why are you deserving of love and greatness and fulfillment in your life?
Mm-hmm.
And just start there and make the small changes. Make it something that you absolutely believe in. So it goes to my next bullet point. Ah, man, I'm segueing like a mug.
Yes, there we go. Befriend yourself.
Befriend yourself. Be
Yes.
your best friend. And there are going to be a lot of people in
Absolutely.
your life that are not going to be comfortable with you being your friend. They're people love the narcissist word right now. Oh, you're such a narcissist, or you're full of yourself.
They
And
love that word, huh?
When
they
it's
love
That's
it.
an overused
Yeah.
word.
It's so overused, and it's used for all the wrong things. And I'm not talking about being a narcissist or being,
No. When
you
it's
know,
genuine and it comes from a genuine place, I've found that it really gives other people permission to love themselves too. Like you can
Right.
tell when somebody authentically, they've done the work, they've gotten really deep and they realize that they're worthy and that we're all worthy. Like every single one of us is worthy and no one's better than anyone
Right.
else.
I say be your friend, so you can see people who aren't friends with themselves.
Yes.
Because once I become my friend, let's say I'm dealing with being overweight. Let's say I'm struggling with it. It's been a struggle in my life, but yet my family and kind of the culture within the family, everybody's overweight, right? And maybe my friends are overweight. And now I start to say, I want to get my health in check. I want to feel healthier. This weight is causing me to have diabetes or whatever the medical issues are happening. And I'm going to be my friend and love me and get this in check, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you do the work, you do the exercise, and you're struggling and it's emotional and you want to have the food and you want to do this and you want to do that, but you're like, no, I'm going to be my friend. I'm going to take care of me because my health matters. I want to live a long life. But then all the people around you are like, really? You think you're better than us? You're not, you're losing weight and now you're exercising. Oh, you're too good. And that could really get to you. So my question is, when we are working on being our own friend for what's best for our lives, how do we manage the people around us that want to sabotage that for us?
Oh goodness, I share this with people all the time. Like people will vibrate up or vibrate out. at some point, you've got to get comfortable with letting people go. People will come and people will go, and some people might not be ready yet for you to be in alignment with yourself. Be wonderful if they could get in alignment with themselves, but everybody's on their own journey, and we accept people the way they are, you know?
That's key right there, acceptance, right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes people, you have to say to people, not right now.
Yeah.
Especially when they're family members or people you just can't readily get rid of, or you don't really necessarily want to. But it's that acceptance of saying, you know
Absolutely.
what? I'm being my friend right now. Maybe you're not ready to be your own friend. But I'm going to need a little bit of space here. I love you. I have compassion for you. And you're on your own journey. And I accept that. But it can't interfere with the process that I'm doing for myself.
Exactly.
Make sure the people closest to you have a common view of the future, not just the common past.
Yes, absolutely.
Say that one more time, Rodney, for the people in the back.
Make sure the people closest to you, where's the camera, have a common view of the future and not just a common past. I ask people this a lot, people that I coach and mentor. I'll ask them, are there things that you would never allow done to your child that you allow done to you? Are there things that you say to yourself that you would never allow anyone to say to your child? And the answer is always yes. That's what needs to change. I said, why are you not in the same category as your children?
That's great.
You should be in the same category.
That's such a way to look at it, is to say, see yourself as, like, be your friend, be your inner child's friend.
Be in the same
Take
category.
care of that inner child unconditionally, like you would your own children.
Same expectation you have for your children, the same things. You would not let your child say those things to themselves. They said, Mommy, I'm so whatever. And you would say, don't ever say that.
Except for the dysfunctional parents. And they're like,
I've been telling you that all. We're not talking about that.
I'm just kidding.
Because only winners watch
That's
this
why,
show.
That's
Only
why
winners watch
That's
this.
why this show exists, to clean up that mess.
So I want to go to that
If
because
it's not for them, it goes.
right. Like, I trust me. I already have. I've started the TikTok thing, and so I get people. I've been getting quite a following, and I embrace the opinions of everybody. But it's so funny sometimes. I'll get these negative comments, and then I'll look at. I always look to see who's making the comments and things like that, and I'm like, I'm just gonna pray for you. I'm just gonna pray for you because sometimes it's clear that they're just hurt.
They are.
They're saying nasty things, and they're
right.
being, this is stupid, or women like you, and so on and so forth. And it doesn't bother me because I don't know them, right? But it does make me recognize that something about this is striking a chord. So whether they want to agree with it or maybe it's something uncomfortable, I'll plant the seed anyway. All right, I'm going to go to the next one because we have two more, and I want to crunch it in. We've got like 20 minutes, give or take. So know and embrace your strengths. Everybody has something wonderful and strong about them. Everybody. Just because you're not maybe the outspoken one, and maybe you're more of an introvert, or maybe because I feel like people compare themselves a lot to other people. There's a lot of comparison. I think that's also a part of self-sabotaging. Well, look what they're doing, especially now in the age of social media, where we're constantly seeing people who portray these grandiose, larger than life, and everybody thinks that's how I'm supposed to be. But yet you have a strength. You have a strength in your voice. You have a strength in your silence. But it's about knowing what that is. Like another example real quick is a giver. When you are giving, sometimes you pair when you're sabotaging with people who are takers. And then they somewhat rob you of the gift because you don't want to give anymore. But your strength innately is to be a giver. So if you know that's your strength, say, okay, this is what makes me feel good when I'm giving. But why am I giving? Is it so that person can accept me? Or am I giving because that is my abundance? And you have to check in with that. So that way when you are, as I'm using this example, giving, and I know that that's my strength, I go to be a giver as a contributor without the need of any reward from that. But that's my strength. That's what I'm going to grow in. And so embrace it. You were going to say?
Yeah. Oh, I have so many things to say about this. Just to make it simple and put it into a practice. is to play an appreciation game with yourself, is to just recognize throughout the day what you appreciate about yourself. Just like little things, and then they'll, because sometimes people have a hard time seeing what's so awesome about them,
Right.
and so if they could just at least recognize the smaller things throughout the day, and then they'll add up, and on a vibrational frequency, because everything is energy and emotions have vibrational frequencies to them. The frequency of love and appreciation vibrate at the same frequency. And in that space, anger does not exist. Guilt, shame, none of those negative, destructive emotions exist at all. And so it puts someone in a high vibration state, and then they attract people that are also in that state.
I love that. The light, right? The love is the light in your life. And to give an example, or like a metaphor, if you will, is dark space is infinite. Like you look in outer space and it's just blackness beyond, right? There's no way to see where it ever ends. Because even if I'm in a room and the lights are out, it's just black everywhere. But if you take a flicker, even a small flicker of light, light a match, in that large space of darkness, you will see that light. And everybody has that light,
Mm-hmm.
to your point.
Absolutely.
And we just need to know that, You were going to say something, Rodney.
I think people are afraid of conceit or feeling like they think too much of themselves or being overconfident. There's a lot of negative things that come up for people when they admit to themselves what they're good at. They don't want to believe they're great at something. They downplay their skills and their gifts. But there's nothing wrong with knowing what you are gifted at. Nothing wrong with knowing what makes you special.
Right.
As long as you can see what makes the person next to you special.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
See, we all weave together like this. The world's a better place if you saw what makes you great and you saw what makes the other person great. But what we do is we downplay ourselves and we downplay the people around us. Right? So that's not a better world. What we need to do is realize that it's a gift, that we need to share it, and that it's not about us, that we are conduits, we're stewards of something special that we have an obligation to share with everyone else.
Absolutely.
Because it's not about us.
So with that, the next one, the last one is, second to last is practicing mindfulness. And it kind of, again, goes along with that, but also examining the root causes, which we've kind of alluded to that. And when we went back, and I'm going to go back to the slide where it was trauma, cognitive dissonance, rejection, modeling, lack of self-esteem. Sometimes the best place to start is going back to the root, right?
Mhm.
To really examine the root. Again, for me, it was, had a parent who ended their life. It left me in a home with a single parent who was dealing with depression because of that. And me, as the oldest child, having to take charge and be in charge at a very young age, leaving home at 16. So there's these stories, right, that led me to feel abandoned, led me to feel like I wasn't enough, made me feel alone. And really going to that root and saying, okay, I'm not a victim to the story. It happened.
Mhm.
That's what happened in my life. That's my story. That is what happened. But the way I choose to now live in that story is very different. If these things have happened to me, I have to know that it was what helped to build my strength. It is what made me understand my resilience, what made me someone who persevered. I don't have to see it like it's happening now and today. I don't have to say, well, I'm depressed because my mom was depressed because my dad was depressed. Or abuse was in my house, so that means I'm going to be abusive or be abused. No, I get to say these things happened and they are lessons for my life, and to be a victor in my life and not a victim. But you stem from the root. What is the story? What is the narrative? And how am I making that a belief system for my mind? And how is that playing out in my life?
You know, you rarely ever see a champion boxer who had an easy life.
Right.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Some skilled ones have come up, but they get knocked out.
But I get up again.
They can't take it on the chin. Right? So, that's why they tend to be from Mexico, or maybe from the, inner cities, or they're from the Eastern Europe, or places where it's tough, it's hard. They've been knocked down a few times. They've been through it. It's who you become through what you go through. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you handle it. So
Right.
you get the opportunity to be a greater version of yourself by coming through things.
Yeah,
I love
and
that.
alchemizing that experience, which you did, and it goes beyond just recognizing it intellectually. I mean, you had a visceral shift in your body
Right.
so that when you tell your story now, you don't have that feeling of being a victim. It's actually an empowering story where you're like, I went through this
Right.
and I have all of these gifts from this experience. And that's alchemizing. It's shifting it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, right? Because everybody has a story. Everyone has a story less than or greater than my own.
Right.
But again, what we do with that story is where we get our power, or we become powerful or powerless.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we get to choose. Do I want to tell the story and be a powerless person in that story, or do I want to tell the story and be powerful in that story? Because everything and everyone that has done something harmful to me to lead me to this point of life of self-sabotaging, I get to make the decision now that no more. I'm not going to self-sabotage because it doesn't benefit me and it's not going to change what happened. Real quick before you, because you're getting ready to say something, is the last bullet point, which we really don't need to go into detail about, would be, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with hiring a therapist or getting a coach. We're all coaches and
Absolutely.
are certified in some degree. And I myself personally, although I am a coach and I'm certified to be a coach, I need a coach to this day. I've trained physically. I've done competitions. I know exactly what to do to get in that gym and work out and work this muscle. But it always helps me to have a coach to give me some accountability, to tweak it just a little bit, because I only know what I know. And sometimes that help gives you that extra push that you need to give you the guidance. And so at the end of the day, do your self work. But if you're really stuck, find someone that's going to provide you the tools to get you to that next level. Be intentional about your life.
Absolutely.
You were going to say something.
Well, a lot of people just try to figure life out for themselves, and that's the long road. That's hard.
Yes.
And it doesn't work very well because you're still looking at life through the same lenses that you have the problem,
Right.
right? So, boxer, you can be a great boxer and you still got a coach in the corner because they got a different vantage point than you. They
Correct.
see what you're doing wrong that you might not see because you're in the battle.
Absolutely.
So it always behooves you to have someone that can have an objective view and kind of see your weak spots, and they'll have the same different weak spots than you. It doesn't mean they're
Right.
better than you.
Right.
Means that they just might cover
And
that
there's no
spot where
shame in it.
right. There's
There's
no
no
shame.
Oh,
shame.
not
No
at
shame.
all. And it
No shame.
helps you compress time.
Well, the most successful people we know have coaches.
Absolutely.
The unsuccessful people have none. Those are the ones that got it all figured out.
Absolutely.
Yes.
100%. So let's do a little close. I always like to do a little round robin at the end of the show to kind of do some closing thoughts from everybody here. And then I'll show the little references of where some of these articles came from. But Rodney, closing thoughts on how to overcome self-sabotage.
Again, habits, rituals, and routines, because your subconscious mind is wired through repetition mainly. So if you just have something that you do that's detached from emotion, time you get up in the morning, doing things you don't want to do, the discipline, having the discipline to do things that will give you new patterns in your mind that will start to override the patterns that sabotage you. That helps a lot.
Absolutely. What about you, Tamara?
So, love is the currency. Pour love into ourselves. First thing, like you spoke about the daily routine. And so pour love into yourself. There is no one on the planet more deserving of your love than you. And so that morning ritual, feeding yourself first so that then you can live in flow and give from the overflow.
Absolutely. That was so beautifully said. I'll say that I'm going to go back to the why. Your life is deserving of a why that is compelling for you. And I think that if you just really, truly tap into the deserving why for your life, everything else will kind of fall into its place. But you have to first tell yourself, this is why my life it needs to be, why my life is worthy and deserving of fulfillment and happiness and joy. And then seeking out a mission and believing in that. And so that way it'll come to you, because it will come to you.
Absolutely.
So thank you all. This has, to me,
Thank
been a
you.
very rich and rewarding show. I think there's a lot of great nuggets. There are some references, so if you could put that up for me, Mr. Kwan. Verywellmind.com, an article by Barbara Field, she's a PhD, and Self-Sabotaging, Why Do We Do It, and 8 Ways to Stop by Tanya J. Peterson. So if you want to check out those articles, they're really good to kind of summarize what we talked about today. And once again, thank you so much. If you like the content, you stuck to the end, give us the thumbs up, subscribe to our show. And thank you. So until next time, from my heart to yours. Ciao.